Hi, I'm Toro, and welcome to Toro's History Lullabies. All my life, I've needed a little background noise to fall asleep. For years, it was just the hum of a fan or some soft static. But ever since wireless earbuds came into my life, I've found myself drifting off to podcasts and documentaries, learning and relaxing at the same time. That's why I started making these videos. Calming stories from history, told gently, to help you unwind, learn something new, and hopefully fall asleep a little easier. So get comfortable, close your eyes if you'd like, and let's step quietly into the past. And if you enjoy these stories, I'd love it if you gave the video a like and subscribed for more. Sweet dreams.
The World in 1908. Welcome, dear dreamer, and let your eyes grow heavy as we step softly into the past. I'm Toro, and tonight, I'll be your guide through the gentle echoes of history. Let your thoughts drift away from today and settle into the year 1908, a year of steam whistles and soft gaslight, of bustling carriages and the first flickers of motion pictures. A time when the world was changing, not in great leaps, but in quiet ripples, as if history itself were exhaling. In 1908, the world turned with the grace of a slow waltz, welcoming new ideas and inventions, watching empires shift like clouds, and listening, always listening, to the hum of daily life. Tonight, as you lie beneath your blanket of stars, we'll visit those cobblestone streets, those quiet corners of time, and together, we'll wander, gently, through the world of 1908. So breathe deeply, settle in, and let the year unfold like a lullaby. World events. As the calendar turned to 1908, the world stirred softly beneath layers of tradition and transition. In the heart of the Ottoman Empire, change whispered through ancient streets. The Young Turk Revolution, though filled with the voices of reform, unfolded with surprising restraint. It was a movement of ideas more than weapons, a slow unfolding of constitutional hopes, as a long-standing empire sought to catch its breath in the new century's breeze. There was no thunder of cannons here, just the rustling of pages and speeches, as calls for a parliament echoed gently through marble halls. In Austria-Hungary, a quiet tremor passed through diplomatic circles, as the empire formally annexed Bosnia and Herzegovina. Though international tensions quietly simmered beneath starched collars and velvet drapes, the event itself passed with a curious calm. Diplomats wrote letters, ambassadors shared tea behind lace curtains, and the newspapers, printed in many languages, spoke in cautious tones about sovereignty and the future of the Balkans. Far across the Atlantic, in the United States, a new chapter opened with quiet celebration. The Great White Fleet, a procession of gleaming naval ships, continued its peaceful world tour under President Theodore Roosevelt's vision of goodwill and global presence. These ships, painted in pristine white, glided from port to port like swans across the sea, leaving behind not fear, but fascination. In Tokyo and Sydney, in Manila and Rio, children watched wide-eyed as these vessels appeared on the horizon like ghosts from a mechanical dream. Meanwhile, the world tilted its gaze northward, toward the icy breath of the Arctic. It was in 1908 that Frederick Cook claimed to have reached the North Pole, though his footsteps would soon be questioned. Still, the idea of reaching the top of the world stirred a sense of wonder in drawing rooms and schoolhouses alike. Could man truly touch the edge of the map? The answer shimmered like frost on glass, elusive, silent, and beautiful. In London, the first steps were taken toward what would become the welfare state. The Old Age Pensions Act was passed, a simple promise, gently offered, that in their later years, the elderly would not be forgotten. Not a revolution, but a quiet kindness tucked into the folds of policy. In this way, 1908 moved slowly but surely, like a lantern carried through the fog, lighting the way ahead. And high in the skies above Siberia, something strange arrived. In June, near the Tunguska River, a great explosion bent trees and stirred speculation for decades to come. Was it a comet? A meteor? The heavens gave no certain reply. But in its wake, the world was reminded of nature's quiet power. That even in remote stillness, the earth can sigh. So, As the seasons passed in 1908, the world did not roar. It murmured. It pondered. It stretched ever so gently toward a new tomorrow. Next, we'll close our eyes and step into the rhythm of daily life around the world in 1908. Let us drift there now. Daily life around the world in the soft light of a morning in 1908. The world awoke not to the buzz of phones or hum of engines, but to roosters crowing, to distant bells, to the clatter of hooves on cobbled streets. It was a world that moved slowly, with grace, with rhythm, and with the rituals of everyday life. In a small English village, the day began with the lighting of a coal stove. A woman wrapped in wool stirred porridge in a cast-iron pot, the scent of oats and ash curling into the corners of the room. Outside, children in long coats and buttoned boots walked hand in hand to school, their slates tucked beneath arms, their breath rising in clouds through the misty morning air. Homes were lit by gas lamps or candlelight, casting a warm flicker on wallpapered walls. Across the Atlantic, in the growing towns of the American Midwest, families gathered for breakfast beside polished wood tables. Cornbread, molasses, and eggs sizzled on iron skillets. Men read folded newspapers while women embroidered quietly by the window. And though factories had begun to stir the cities, in these towns, time still moved with the seasons. In Russia's countryside, peasants in linen shirts and felted boots walked beside their plows, the fields wide and windblown. There were songs sung low, songs that had been sung for generations, and in tiny wooden homes, samovars hissed gently, offering tea to warm, tired hands. In Tokyo, where tradition and modernity held hands, daily life was a dance of contrasts. Kimono-clad elders bowed in temples, while young men in Western hats rode electric trams past glowing shop fronts. Markets buzzed with fishmongers and tea vendors, their voices soft and quick. Paper lanterns bobbed in the evening air, lighting narrow alleys with a quiet glow. In Egypt, the sun rose over sand-colored homes and the calm curve of the Nile. Women fetched water in clay jars, balancing them gracefully on their heads. Dates and bread were shared in shaded courtyards, while nearby, camels carried baskets through winding streets where incense drifted from doorways. Life was slow here, shaped by the river, by the prayer call, by the patience of the desert. And in the cities, in Paris, Berlin, Buenos Aires, Bombay, life grew louder, but not too loud. Horse-drawn carriages lined the avenues. Tailors worked in sunlit shops, seamstresses hummed by oil lamps, and bakeries filled the morning with the scent of crusty loaves. Clothing was a mixture of form and function, long skirts, suspenders, waistcoats, and delicate gloves. People dressed with care, not for speed, but for dignity. There were no smartphones, no earbuds, no streaming sounds. Only the lullaby of footsteps, of distant trains, of radios just beginning to whisper into the world. Evenings were for quiet, for letter writing by candlelight, for parlor games and piano tunes, for stories told aloud as the fire crackled low. In 1908, life was not fast, but it was full of texture, of smell, of ceremony. And in each corner of the globe, people paused to greet the day, to break bread, and to rest beneath the stars. Science, inventions, and technology in 1908. The world of science moved not with thunder, but with the quiet tick of gears, the steady scribble of chalk upon blackboards, and the hushed awe of minds unfolding the mysteries of nature. In laboratories lit by soft lamplight, inventors and thinkers worked late into the night. One such man, Henry Ford, watched as the Model T began its quiet journey into the hands of ordinary people. It was not the very first car, but it was perhaps the first car made for everyone, a gentle hum of progress on four wheels. Simple, boxy, and modest, the Model T began to roll out from Detroit like a dream becoming real. It would change the world, slowly at first, then all at once. But here, in 1908, it was still just a newborn idea, fresh and full of promise. Elsewhere, in the skies, the Wright brothers continued to glide forward. 5 years after their first flight, they now flew longer, steadier, as whispers of human flight fluttered across the pages of scientific journals. The sky, once the realm of birds and stars, was opening, quietly, like a curtain at dawn. In Britain, a young man named Ernest Rutherford was peering deep into the structure of atoms. He studied radiation, not for danger or destruction, but to understand the building blocks of the universe. He spoke softly, often working alone, his experiments etched into notebooks that would one day transform how we saw matter itself. And beneath the streets of London, engineers made the earth move. The city's underground railway, the first of its kind, grew longer and deeper, carving pathways in the dark, lit by tiny electric bulbs and filled with the echoes of footsteps and wheels. Travel that once took hours could now be measured in minutes. The world was shrinking. Not in size, but in reach. In Austria, an engineer named Victor Kaplan was sketching the early design of a water turbine, a humble swirl of thought that would, in time, bring power to thousands. Like so many ideas of the time, his invention began as a whisper in the margins, quietly waiting to change the flow of history. Even the Earth itself seemed to take part in this age of curiosity. When a strange event shook the Tunguska forest in Siberia, scientists began to wonder. Could space touch the Earth? No answers were clear, but questions filled the air like stardust, gently settling into the minds of astronomers and dreamers alike. Yes, 1908 was not an age of digital dazzle or loud spectacle. It was the age of gears, of glass tubes and slide rules, of scientists in tweed coats, of engineers with ink-stained hands, of curiosity carried on quiet footsteps. And so, the world turned slowly, wonderingly, into the arms of modernity. Culture and the arts in the gentle glow of gaslight and the rustle of velvet curtains, the world of 1908 offered a rich, quiet tapestry of culture. It was an age where the arts were not rushed, where stories unfolded slowly, music lingered in the air, and paintings spoke in silence. In Vienna, the golden city of waltzes and salons, a young painter named Gustav Klimt was capturing dreams in gold and swirling lines. His portraits shimmered with mystery, not loud, but luminous. Their figures wrapped in spirals and silence. At the Vienna Kunstschau, visitors wandered slowly past canvases that glowed like candlelight, pausing in reverence, as though each painting held a secret spoken just for them. Not far from there, another artist, Egon Schiele, was just beginning to sketch the world with trembling lines. His work would stir hearts in the years to come, but in 1908, he was still learning, still quietly seeking the edge of emotion with every pencil stroke. In Paris, the theaters sparkled with soft laughter and feathered hats. The Moulin Rouge twirled on into the night, and early cinema flickered in quiet corners. These were films without voices, shadows dancing on a screen, telling stories with glances, gestures, and the gentle whirl of a projector. Audiences watched in silence, eyes wide, hearts open. Music, too, had its own gentle renaissance. In Russia, the delicate compositions of Alexander Scriabin floated through concert halls, his piano pieces like whispers and waves, music that seemed to glow rather than sound. Claude Debussy's impressionist works drifted across Europe like watercolor on wind. And in America, spirituals and early blues hummed from porches and parlors, planting the seeds of future song. Books rested in laps and on nightstands, pages turning in slow succession. G.K. Chesterton released The Man Who Was Thursday, a curious novel, both mysterious and whimsical. It asked questions more than it answered, leaving readers to ponder beneath their quilts. And in the pages of children's books, illustrators began to paint wonder. Delicate drawings of animals and waistcoats, of gardens and forests, of adventures told in soft rhyme, all whispered bedtime tales to young ears across England and beyond. Art was not always understood. It was debated in cafes and salons, in letters passed between friends, but it was never rushed. In 1908, creation still lived in the quiet moments, in brushstrokes, in candlelight, in piano keys pressed gently by evening hands. And all around the world, culture bloomed not in shouts, but in sighs. The soft sighs of a world learning how to dream. Media and headlines in 1908. News traveled not in a flash, but in the rustle of newspaper pages and the crackle of early radio waves. It arrived with the Morning Post, tucked under doorways, carried by boys in woolen caps shouting headlines through foggy streets. The London Times stood tall among newspapers, its pages filled with dense columns and dignified fonts. No loud images or color splashes, just words, carefully chosen, printed in soft black ink. Headlines told of distant events, revolutions murmuring in Constantinople, ships gliding across oceans, new laws and quiet scandals. In the United States, papers like the New York Times, the Chicago Tribune, and the Washington Post offered a window into both local and global life. Readers sipped coffee beside stories of science, sports, and city council meetings. There were updates on Roosevelt's naval fleet, on the new Model T, and on something curious happening in the skies above Siberia. In homes with the latest technology, the wireless, a precursor to the radio, crackled softly in the background. It was not yet filled with music or voices, but with faint signals, distant Morse code tapping out across the ether. It was the breath before the broadcast, a gentle promise of what would come. Magazines were delicate, like keepsakes. Ladies' Home Journal, Harper's Weekly, and the Strand magazine offered short stories, fashion sketches, recipes, and serialized fiction. Children flipped eagerly through Boys' Own Paper or St. Nicholas magazine, their imaginations lit by stories of faraway lands and quiet heroes. Prices were humble. A newspaper might cost a penny or two. A fine magazine, a nickel. Ink-stained fingertips, and articles were often read aloud at supper tables, bringing the world, carefully filtered and politely phrased, into the heart of the home. News in 1908 was not fast, but it was trusted, pondered, and passed between hands like folded secrets. People born/died every year welcomes new voices, and every year, gently, some fall silent. In 1908, the world opened its arms to those just beginning their journey, and bowed quietly to those whose story had come to a close. Among the newborn cries and lullabies of this year, a few names would, one day, be whispered far and wide. Betty Davis was born on an April morning in Massachusetts. No one yet knew the depth her eyes would carry, or how the silver screen would one day glow beneath her gaze. She was, for now, simply a child, swaddled and sleeping, with a life of drama and brilliance ahead. In a small Canadian village, Simone de Beauvoir came into the world. Though her voice would one day challenge philosophy itself, in 1908, she was simply held close, bathed in light from a French spring sky. And in the northern lands of Sweden, a baby named Olof Palme was born, who would, years later, shape politics and peace. But here, in this quiet year, he was only a heartbeat newly begun. Elsewhere, gentle farewells filled the air. Grover Cleveland, the 22nd and 24th President of the United States, took his final rest. He left behind speeches, letters, and the soft echo of a leader's voice now dimmed. The artist Henri Rousseau, known for dreamlike jungles and bold leaves, laid down his brushes. His work, often misunderstood in life, would live on, its bold colors blooming like gardens in memory. And in music halls and opera houses, fans paid tribute to Edvard Grieg, whose Norwegian melodies had warmed the world with their quiet power. Though his hands now rested still, his notes would continue, floating through generations like the echo of a lullaby. Yes, 1908 gave us new stories to follow, and softly closed the chapters of others. Each life a thread, woven into the fabric of time. Not forgotten, only folded gently into history. Now, we arrive at the year's twilight. Let us reflect on how the world felt as 1908 exhaled its final breath. And so, as the final days of 1908 slipped softly away, the world did not tremble, it exhaled. Another circle around the sun was complete. Frost-dusted windows in Moscow and Montreal, while in the southern hemisphere, December sang with summer breezes and open doors. No fireworks yet, just firewood crackling, just the hush of snow or the rustle of warm fields. In cities, lamps glowed behind curtains, and families gathered in parlors to share stories or listen to music played softly on upright pianos. There were cards exchanged, handwritten with care, and wool scarves hung to dry after long walks beneath the stars. Across Europe, the whispers of change moved gently, like fog rolling over moors. Empires were growing uneasy in their grandeur, but nothing cracked. Not yet. For now, kings still reigned. Carriages still passed beneath ornate arches, and gaslights still flickered over cobblestone. In small towns, it was a time for reflection, not on global affairs, but on the small seasons of life. A child had learned to read. A crop had grown well. A loved one had returned from a distant city. These were the milestones that mattered most. Quiet joys, folded into memory like pressed flowers in a book. The skies, too, offered their silence. There were no planes streaking overhead, no satellites blinking down. Only stars, ancient, endless, watching the world with the same steady gaze they had held for millennia. In the factories, machines slowed. Workers returned home, coats heavy with cold dust or sawdust or snow. And as the year's final hours drew near, a gentle stillness settled over the earth, as if even time had paused, just for a breath. And in that breath, there was hope. Hope for the wonders being built. Hope for the children growing wiser. Hope for another spring, another summer, another year to unfold slowly, like a letter waiting to be opened. As 1908 stepped softly into history, it left behind no roar, but a rustle, a sigh, a closing lullaby in the great song of time. And just ahead, waiting patiently, was 1909. Now, dear listener, let us close our eyes. Just one more moment, one more breath, as we reach the end of our journey tonight. Thank you for drifting through time with me tonight. I'm Toro, and it's been my quiet joy to share the soft unfolding of 1908 with you. If this story helped you rest or sparked a gentle dream, please consider liking and subscribing so we can visit more years together, one peaceful step at a time. Next time, we'll wander slowly into 1909, another page in the world's great bedtime book. But for now, let the past fade like candlelight. Let your thoughts float, unhurried. And may your sleep be deep, safe, and full of starlit history. Good night, dreamer. Until we meet again.